Okay, in this lesson we're going to be looking at lesson 6.6 and how to fit a quadratic model to data. And in order to do this lesson, you're going to need a TI Inspire graphing calculator. And I'm going to show you how to use your calculator to do these first couple of problems in these examples. Let's look at this first example. If they give us three coordinates here and they tell us to find a quadratic regression or an equation containing the 3 points. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use our calculator. So when you get out your calculator and turn it on, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to create a spreadsheet. Now if we look at our data here, I'm going to change my screen here. So I'm going to graph these numbers, the -1, -8, the 1, 6, the 3, and the 28. The way that I'm going to do that in my spreadsheet is the first thing I need to do is I need to label my columns. So if you go up to the very top here, you're going to label this first column as your X for your set of X's, and the second column you're going to label your Y for your set of Y's. If you want to see that better, here's what we've done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fill in the numbers with our values for X and our values for Y. So my first column here for my X's, I'm going to put -1, +1, and a +3. Move back over for that first cell under Y. Make sure you don't type anything, by the way, in that gray region. What that'll do is that'll fill in that, whatever you type in there, it'll fill in the entire column with whatever number or equation you put there. So you want to leave that blank. So under Y, we're going to put our Y values, so -8, +6, and a +28. So here's what your screen should look like. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a scatter plot for this data. So to do that, you're going to hit this home button. And right next to the spreadsheet button, we see this. We see the bar graph. And we are going to create a scatter plot. Now don't be concerned if your screen does not look like mine, because basically what they've done is they've taken that data that we put in that spreadsheet and just threw it on the screen. And now what we have to do is we have to organize this data. So in order to do that, you're going to go over to your calculator and you're going to hit the tab button. And yours probably won't have as many options as me because I have some other things open here, but you're going to hit the X button to label the X axis and hit the tab, and we're going to choose Y for the Y axis. And now we're going to create an equation or a line that's going to go through these 3 points. So that's under Menu, Analyze, Regression, and we have all these different options for regression. We want a quadratic. So that's what this chapter is all about, is quadratic equations. And so we get our equation as y equals 1x squared, or you could just say x squared plus 7x minus 2. I don't know why the calculator does that, but anytime you see plus a -2 like they do there at the end, make sure you just change that to be a minus. Your answer would be y equals x squared plus 7x minus 2. And if you want to try that for this other example, you can. But let's look at this next example. Here we have a story problem. Jorge is determining the number of toothpicks necessary to make a square grid. He makes the following shapes. Find a quadratic equation modeling T, which represents the number of toothpicks necessary to make a square grid with n toothpicks on a side. So we're going to have to set up a table here where n is going to represent the number of toothpicks on a side and t represents the total number of toothpicks that you would need. So if you look at this first example, there's only 1 toothpick on each side with a total of 4 toothpicks. The next example, on each side there's 2 toothpicks for a total of 12. And for the next one, there's 3 toothpicks on each side for a total of 24. The last one, there's 4 toothpicks on each side for a total of 40. So now to come up with an equation to represent this data, we're going to have to create a table. So go back to your spreadsheet and go to your tables. I already have this one already made. But you're going to label your first column N and your second column T and plug in the data just like we just came up with in our table on that worksheet. And then, just like we did before, you're going to create a graph, or a scatter plot rather, by going to this bar graph here. And hit the tab button, and you want to choose N for your X. Whoops, sorry, put that in the wrong spot. You want to pick N for your X-axis. And along your Y-axis, that's where you're going to put the total. So your T is going to go along the Y-axis. The reason why you would know that is the total number of toothpicks depends on how many are on each side. So the next step is you're going to create your regression line. So go to Menu, Analyze, Regression. Again, it's under Show Quadratic. So your equation here is just y equals 2x squared plus 2x. You don't need the plus 0 if you don't want. There's your equation. Now in part B here, scroll up here, it says find the number of toothpicks needed to make a grid with 10 toothpicks on a side. Well, x represents the number of toothpicks on a side, so you're going to replace x with 10. So your equation would be y equals 2 times 10 squared plus 2 times 10. Well, 10 squared is 100, times 2 would be 200, and 2 times 10 is 20, so you'd have 220 toothpicks. By the way, if you notice with this previous equation, I used x and y instead of n and t. So maybe a better way to write this would be 2 times n squared plus 2n. But I wouldn't take off points if you used x and y on a quiz or a test. One more thing about your calculator is if I wanted to create a new table, and if I wanted to use x as one of my axes, or label that column with an X. Notice how it fills in the data that we've already used in a previous spreadsheet. Don't just type over these and delete them, because otherwise it could screw up some things later on when you go to create your graph. So instead, a good habit to be into is every time you finish with the graph, just go to the Home button, go to New Document. It'll say, do you want to save it? No. Now if I go to a list and spreadsheet and I type in X, nothing shows up because it's all cleared out. So that is lesson 6.6 in a nutshell. Pretty easy lesson. Just a matter of knowing how to use those calculators. So with that, good luck on that assignment.